But this actually is the Croagh Patrick, all the way from Ballintubber along here. And people coming to Croagh Patrick in prehistoric times from all parts of Ireland, which they would have done. This was the focal point, like, this was their knock, or this was their Mecca, really, And as I said back at the base, that's why they were coming here, really. And that's why St. Patrick came here. But this was the route that they came on. The very summit of the mountain, then the cone, is referred to as Croagh Patrick, or Croagh Patrick. And his name then lives on the top of the mountain as well too. Where the early church was, it's still named on the Ordnance Survey maps, and it's known to locals as Champel Patrick. And then in front of the east of the church, the east of the church at the moment, you have Labba Patrick as well too, where people do the stations when they do climb Croagh Patrick for religious purposes. So the stone that we're looking at here, it's one of the most inscribed rock art stones in Ireland or any part of Great Britain. I know there's hundreds and hundreds of inscriptions of cup art, concentric circles, depressions and stuff like that. Lots of people have their own interpretations on it that represents the sun, the galaxies. Nobody has ever come up with any plausible or fully acceptable meaning to it yet. And before I go any further, I just want to say that none of this here would really be present without the work and the input and the investigations of a local historian, Jerry Bracken, in Westport, because over consecutive years and decades he was coming out here on different dates and he was observing the mountain, and was he who decided and who observed and who noted that on the 18th of April every year and on August the 24th of the same year, that the sun, the setting sun, would hit the very tip of the triangular mountain that we see there, and rather than sinking behind it or in front of it, as it does on other dates in the year, it just came right down the side of the mountain, like a ball rolling down the side of a pyramid. And he had photographed that, and he'd written many articles into the Corner Journal and into the Mayo Archaeological and Historical Journal as well too. So obviously more interest grew in it, and it's a testament to all the work that he did now with the gathering like what we have here today, and giving me an opportunity just to talk about it. But I want to give credit where it's due, and just to say that it was he who did the donkey work, and he that brought this to light in the very beginning. I did state earlier on that the presence of the rock art here, nobody can say for certain the exact reasons for it. Location maybe, and sometimes locations like that can be a signal in certain other parts of the British Isles and Ireland of the presence of certain precious metals. And I did state too, that we do have gold on the mountain here, and in other townlands to the west, other mountain townlands to the west. So whether that was representing the fact that the gold is present, and for people who are coming along this way to be aware of that. Now I know when I was working on Croagh Patrick and doing some survey work there, I contacted the National Museum just to see if any of the artefacts from prehistoric Ireland or early historic Ireland had any gold from Mayo in the composition of the chalices or any of the other objects that they have there. But they were able to confirm that there isn't, most of it is from County Tyrone, Wicklow and other parts of the country. But they don't definitively have anything from Croagh Patrick. So while it was there, and as it is today, it was never mined, seemingly, in prehistoric times. But it does seem like that they were aware of it. And in connection with that, I throw in one of the rivers that flows off the top of the mountain. It's called the Owen Wee River, and that would be the Owen Wee, the yellow river, So as with the Indians, was it the yellow gold that they were describing when they called it the Owen Wee? And in a townland called Pullinukty then at the back of the mountain, John O'Donovan in 1838, he mentioned a small little hollow called Loganor, which would be the hollow of gold. And I have put that into the book that I did on Croagh Patrick. And even though I had met the landowner, I had never actually spoken to him about it. But when we were here last April, he mentioned that to me, and he said that he's actually got a sheep pen where that Loganor is. And obviously, he knows exactly where it is. We haven't gone out there with the metal detector yet, but I'm joking about that. We wouldn't be doing that. We're not allowed to do that, So, whether it's Loganor because of gold or otherwise, it's still there and it's safe enough, yes. So, St. Patrick going to the top of the mountain and, I suppose, creating Christianity and strengthening it for getting down the mountain again and continuing on his voyage around the country. And throughout this parish, by the way, is the parish of Uchwal. And that sounds like an awful mouthful really, like, you know, but it was kind of anglicised then to Achavail, and it translates as the new settlement. And where the graveyard is for most people in Westport now, on the way out the old West Road to Louisburgh, it's in there on the left hand side and it's on the right hand side, and it covers 3 different townlands. One is Churchfield, and I can't remember at the moment now the names of the other 2. But there would have been an early Christian church there as well too, and there would have been a large ecclesiastical enclosure around that. You would have expected burials in there. You may have got a souterrain or an underground chamber, which you would get in that kind of a settlement as well too. Sometimes for the storage of food, and sometimes for the monks or the people who lived in these ecclesiastical centres to go in just for kind of solitary confinement or otherwise. And there is a bull-on stone there as well too, which would be a stone with a hollow in it, like, you know, initially for grinding corn, but then used in a church setting as a holy water font for the retention of holy water. And other townlands then, apart from Oakwall, would be the townland I mentioned earlier on was Croagh Patrick or Glosh Patrick. There's another one then called Faburden, and that's better known locally to people as Prospect. But the townland that Prospect is in, and Prospect House, is a house on the left hand side of the road out near Belclare, and Killadangan would be the general area that's in there. Up behind that as well too, there's a lovely little ecclesiastical settlement, and that would be dating from the early Christian times. And the last one then that comes to mind would be one in Napamana, and that's on the Leenan Road here, just a little further. I can't remember whether it's this way or this way. I think it's this way here. And they've been the whole collection. Further west then in Louisburgh, you've got the early ecclesiastical settlement of Kilgeever, and there's another one then in the townland of Forrigal. And Forrigal is another one of those names in Irish which is very alien really, either in Irish or in English, and I don't really know what the meaning of it is. But I know that the burial ground in this place of Forrigal was written down on the map as Milla, M-I-L-L-A, and John O'Donovan has written that down on the maps as Sweetgrass. At the other side of that house there is the remains of a church, and what I think was a small holy well also. There are some grave markers as well too, showing where there were people buried. In more recent times it was a children's burial ground, but back in the early Christian times obviously the people who lived there were buried there as well too. So that site there and this here, obviously 2 very strong and very powerful archaeological monuments. And I don't know if you noticed when we were coming over the road as well too, down on the left hand side there was a lovely upright standing stone, which is very clear for those of you who looked at it. Like, standing stones would be very common monuments throughout the country, but mostly along the western seaboard or the western counties. A lot of the standing stones, well, nobody knows exactly why any individual stone is there, like, you know. In Irish they would be described as a galán, but some of them would mark places where people were buried, and others are thought to indicate where there was kind of ancient boundaries, marking the boundary between one tribe and another tribe, like, you know, just rough markers for their territory. You know, it's like if you come on that, you're going into another man's property or another man's land or something like that. So without doing an excavation you wouldn't know for sure. Sorry?
Sorry, can I just ask where is the town?
All right, well, as we came over along the road from the centre, it would be just in a field. When we're going back again, if you look down to your right, once we get away from the bushes, you'll see it down below you, you know. And like a lot of the monuments around here, like, you know, the landowners, well, I cannot speak now for the standing stone, but I know a lot of years when we finished up here, a number of us have gone in and we've looked at it and taken photographs and that, you know. And there's been no objection from the landowners. But even this stone here, like, you know, the man who lived in the house, his name was John Gibbons, Lord of Mercy on him, and he loved to have people calling here, and he had absolutely no objection to people coming in, so long as they were respectful of the site and didn't interfere with it or didn't interfere with his grounds or that, you know. And since he has died, I am not sure if Mayo County Council have taken over the house or whether they're in the process of, but it's empty at the moment now anyway, and I'm sure there's lots of great potential that somebody could do with something like that, you know.
No, Mayo County Council bought it.
They did, yeah? Okay, so they have it. Oh, that's right, that's on that wall there. That's just from sometime during the famine, and it's kind of a plaque dedicated to some person who was very generous to some of the local people here during the famine. But that would be very modern and very recent, you know. But it just shows the continuity of activity at sites, you know, here and throughout the whole of the Republic of Ireland and the whole of the world, really. Like, you know, as we look at the top of the mountain, we see activity there from prehistoric times. And the man I spoke about earlier on, Jerry Bracken, he took some aerial shots of the top of Croagh Patrick, and one of them has snow on the mountain. And in the snow and the undulation of the way the snow, it just showed kind of a rampart, a wall going around the top of the mountain. And when excavations were carried out there in 1994 and 1995, they just took a sample of some of the material, and it is dating from about 300 or so BC. So that looks like a prehistoric rampart which was in place at the top of the mountain. And while the church today, you know, is the main thing that you see on the top of the mountain, you know, I think in prehistoric times, as you're coming along there, if you had a wall on the top of the mountain, that would stand out very much as well too. And it would be probably a lot more impressive than what the church is today. And here we have a stone that was inscribed in prehistoric times. And obviously that's the reason that St. Patrick, when he was travelling along here, he became aware of its presence. It's called by us the Bohea stone, but it's got the name of St. Patrick's chair. So obviously the implication is that he stopped and he rested, and he rested long enough, like, you know, to convert it as well too, and all who came here and all who visited here. The early ecclesiastical settlement that's in there on the far side. When I'm finished up here, I can go in and just show it to anybody who wants to stay on and have a look at it. Now, it's not very impressive. You're looking at kind of grassed over foundations of a church and lots of little markers for graves. There is a hollow that we think might have marked a well, but we won't be going as far as that because that's become very overgrown. But I am of the opinion, like, you know, that that site in there, before there was a Christian settlement there, that there was some other thing there. Maybe the well that was in there was a sacred well also, and that was converted, as St. Patrick would have done, with lots of pagan worship wells around the country.
Excuse me.
St. Patrick's chair, yeah.
That name didn't last to the present, did it?
Well, colloquially not really, like, you know, it's only, I suppose, people who are kind of more studying maps, yeah, mostly known as the Bohea stone. So only people that look at the map would call it that, really, you know, as far as I know, like, yeah.
St. Patrick's chair though, when Donegal was here then?
Well, he would have noted that, you know, but I cannot say for sure now, to be quite honest, you know. Sorry?
Anyway, so what do you mean by when the river's, the wee river is yellow?
Oh, the Owen Wee River. Well, the Owen Wee is the name of the river. Like, you know, it originates halfway up the mountain, and it flows into the sea at Belclare. And I'm just taking the word Owen Wee. Owen would be the English form of Owen. Owen is the Irish word for river, and Wee then is yellow.
Yeah.
And you know, but they would have changed that to Wee,
Yes.
because when they were changing, like, you know, when the English people made the maps that we have nowadays, like, you know, so anything that sounded a little incongruous to them, they tried to make it as close to their way of pronouncing it than our way of pronouncing it, you know.
Yeah, but like, no, main question I'm asking is why is it yellow?
Well, the thought, like, you know, that gold is yellow, you know, in colour.
Okay.
You know, on the early Irish flag, green, white and gold, like, you know, that'd be close enough to yellow, like, you know, so.
Okay.
Is that rock going any further down to the ground? Is it a symbol there? Is it?
Well, I think it is a big lump of rock outcrop, you know.
In the ancient days, it would have been much higher when we'd have been.
Well, no, I think in the ancient times it would have been as it is.
As it is, as we are now, yeah.
You know, I would think so. I would think so, yes, yeah. But I'm sure it goes a long way down into the ground, and you know, it's a point as well too, like, you know, because even on the top of Croagh Patrick, you know, the early churches that were there, and when I say early, I'm talking about, like, you know, the 5th century to the 9th century, you know, and you think at the top of the mountain, like, you know, that nothing is ever going to get covered over, but that church became completely covered over, like, you know, you cannot see it now, you know, but when they did excavate, like, you know, they found about that depth of a wall of a church, like, you know, so, you know, erosion and all that, still, you know, the roof falling in, it's been covered over completely. So, you know, when this stone here was inscribed, the original ground level may have been a lot lower. because with the build-up of ground, you know, you could get a foot of growth, you could get 2 foot of growth, even though it does seem very dauby, like, you know. And normally growth is kind of something that's softer, you know, like peat or topsoil or that, you know.
So you could even find more symbols if it was bigger.
It is possible, but I know a good number of years ago now, Jerry Walsh, who's an archaeologist with Mayo County Council, he did a kind of a clean up here. He had to get a license to do it, and you know, just stripping away all the grass and cleaning it. And he went down to the existing ground level at the time, so we was able to do a count and photograph all the art inscription and just have a definitive record of it and that, you know. But it is likely that some more would continue underground, perhaps, like, you know, so long as you wouldn't be going down into the bedrock, because generally the bedrock was kind of sacred for ancient people as well too, you know. You know, any kind of fertile soil above that would be fair game play, like, you know, for activity and stuff like that, you know, but they wouldn't go into the bedrock as a rule.
So what's the significance of these concentric circles along
Yes.
here? What's the significance of them, do you know?
Well, nobody knows, and I'm certainly not going to go proposing any special significance for them, like, you know. But I suppose a lot of Irish early art, like, you know, is based on circles, like, you know. And I suppose in pagan times, you know, where they didn't have Christianity, they had the sun and they had the moon and they had the stars, like, you know. So perhaps a representation again too, like, you know, of what was there for them to worship or what was ruling their world at that particular time, like, you know. And replicated then, of course, like, you know, by the art at Newgrange and many places around the country like that, you know. And just incidentally, there's only one other site in County Mayo. It's over near Tourmakeady. It's kind of on the mountains over Tourmakeady side that has rock art in it as well too. It's a townland called Cushloga. So they're the only two in Mayo that we know of at the moment. But this is the kind of site as well too. I mean, if that got grown over, like, you know, I mean, if it didn't have to be close to where it is, that could be enmeshed, like, you know, and you could have a man carrying out reclamation. And, you know, you never know, like, you know, what could happen to sites like that, or what could have happened to sites like this in other places as well too, where you have a man driving a machine and he wouldn't be too aware, like, you know, he might think, gosh, that looks unusual, but not pay much heed to it, like, you know. It might be a Monday morning and he might be feeling a bit blue and give it an extra clatter. So just as regards to Christianity as well too, there was the kind of natural Irish early monasticism, and that would have been what St. Patrick founded. He brought Christianity, and people then went to communities like the townlands I mentioned, the one here, the one in Oakwall, the one in Appamana, the one in Faburn or Prospect, and they would have a big large ring around it, like, you know, an ecclesiastical enclosure, and everything within that ring then would have been church grounds. So the ring would have been a high bank, let's say, and it wouldn't be now to keep people out like the ring forts or to keep the animals in. It would be just to kind of preserve the church lands and the church grounds. So they'd carry on their own activities. They'd farm, they'd have their own crafts, you know, they'd plant vegetables, they'd be self-sufficient in that. But they'd see themselves as kind of the carriers of the torch, of the flame of Christianity. And around the 9th century then, that faded away because with the Normans coming into Ireland, the established orders came in. So we had the Cistercians coming into Mellifont. They were the very first ones to come into Ireland. And then following that, the Augustinians and all the other cloth orders as well too. And when they came in, they kind of brought the abbeys and the monasteries and the friaries with them. So that was kind of more based on the Roman villa, you know, rectangles, like what we have at Ballintubber Abbey, and, you know, Morahan as well too. That kind of setup, you know, a lot more stonework, a lot more architecture and that, you know, but based in a kind of a rectangle. And they would have been the two kind of forms of Christianity, really, you know. So the settled Irish, and then the established orders that came in after that. So I think that's me done for the moment now, and I'm sorry that the sun didn't come out, but if any of you are around, maybe tomorrow.